Good evening, I'm Chris Wallace in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching this special edition of the O'Reilly Factor, the War on Terror. And let's get right to our top story, the investigation into the San Bernardino shooting. Big developments today with the FBI confirming what many have suspected about the attack.
As of today, based on the information and the facts as we know them, we are now investigating these horrific acts as an act of terrorism. There are some telephonic connections between these two individuals, at least one of these individuals, and other subjects of our investigation. I'm aware of the Facebook post you're mentioning, and I saw the same thing you did. We don't know what's there yet. We're still continuing to look into that. I know it was in a general timeline where that post was made, and yes, there was a Pledge of Allegiance. We are not aware of any further threats in the U.S. at this time.
That means the San Bernardino rampage is now the single deadliest terror attack on U.S. soil since 9/11. FBI Director James Comey also came out today to comment on the investigation.
This is now a federal terrorism investigation led by the FBI. And the reason for that is that the investigation so far has developed indications of radicalization by the killers and of a potential inspiration by foreign terrorist organizations. So far, we have no indication that these killers are part of an organized larger group or form part of a cell. There's no indication that they are part of a network. We know that this is very unsettling for the people of the United States. What we hope you will do is not let fear become disabling, but to instead try to channel it into an awareness of your surroundings to get you to a place where you are living your life. But if you see something that doesn't make sense, you say something to somebody.
Joining us now with more from Los Angeles is counterterrorism specialist Aaron Cohen. And with me here in Washington, Jim Hansen from the Center for Security Policy. Gentlemen, I want to talk about this from a counterterrorism perspective, which is both of your expertise. Aaron, I think the biggest question for a lot of people is how a husband and wife living in a quiet American town could become so radicalized and assemble such an enormous arsenal, and apparently no one knew. You say that this is what you would call a modified sleeper cell. Explain that, sir.
Well, the modified sleeper cell is a term that I'm using to describe somebody who could potentially become radicalized, meaning using ISIS, the genius in ISIS is their ability to be able to use the internet to connect with would-be or potential radicals, which means they don't have to have crossed the threshold, Chris, and already be at that place where they're ready to go commit an act of terror. But when they do become radicalized, like these two did, when they travel overseas, they go pick up that wife in Saudi Arabia, they end up becoming indoctrinated. And Saudi Arabia is known, Chris, to have a very strong, hardcore Islamic line when it comes to the way that they preach. You can then tap into that sleeper cell and then exploit that, like we saw here, and provide them with how to attain weapons, how to keep those weapons in their houses, how to use tactical gear, put on that gear, and then be able to fire those weapons. And this is all being done on the internet through secure databases and blogs.
Let me bring in Jim Hansen here, because I want to talk about the wife. One of the big developments today was the fact that Tashfeen Malik, the wife of Saeed Farouk, apparently pledged allegiance to ISIS and to its leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, in the moments before this attack was launched. One, what do you make of that? And two, what do you make of reports, which don't seem to be confirmed at this point, that she may have radicalized him?
I think it is fairly common in incidents like this for someone to make a martyrdom action. In this case, if she's posting, potentially while he's inside reconning the site of the massacre, and she posts a message pledging allegiance, they're basically saying, we're in the jihad, we're part of the caliphate, we're part of the global jihad movement. And I think that's not uncommon. I think you need to look at this. Chris, it's easy for people to understand the violent jihad. Heads get cut off, people get slaughtered at holiday parties, but there's a larger civilization jihad that the Muslim Brotherhood is perpetrating in America. They have a plan. They are using the Muslim student associations that they formed. They're using mosques where they buy the land, where they import the imams and front groups to go ahead and push that agenda.
I want to pick up on that with you, Jim, because you say that the mosque that Farouk attended, one of a couple that he attended, the Islamic Center of Riverside, you've raised questions about that and its ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. What's your point?
The Muslim Brotherhood, through a number of front groups, one of which is the North American Islamic Trust, has bought property and put in place most of the mosques in the United States. So they buy them, they set up front groups to go ahead and get them staffed, they import the imams who do a lot of the preaching, and they bring in the traveling imams. So this is an operation where they're setting it up to be able to preach jihad and radicalize people under the cover of religious freedom here in the United States. It's a cunning plan.
Aaron, I want to pick up on a question that I think has confused a lot of people, and I think it's one of the reasons that it took us a couple of days to come to the conclusion it's terror and not workplace violence. Usually in a terror attack, and correct me if I'm wrong, you want to strike in the most public way, in the kind of place that would most terrorize the largest number of people. So under those circumstances, why strike at a county Department of Public Health Christmas party where it would raise the possibility it was workplace violence and not terror at all?
Well, my answer, Chris, is why not? Soft targets are soft for a reason. You go after what you can get. Al-Qaeda is never going to be able to outdo itself and kill more than the thousands of people that they killed using a plane as a tactical instrument to be able to crash into a building. ISIS knows this. So ISIS can tap into this resource, again, of dormant, potentially radicalized, or people that can be radicalized from these sleeper dormant cells in these fronts, like Mr. Hansen just pointed out, and they can attack anywhere they want, and that's the problem. And I think the reason, Chris, why the FBI was very cautious in coming out but then realized they had to say this was terrorism is because the implications of the larger macro threat that we're facing, if we don't look at it from terrorism, or if they don't look at it from terrorism then work backwards, Chris, means that we could potentially be looking at a lot more terrorism. And so the FBI got smart and they went, hey, let's start framing this thing the opposite way, a little more the way Israel does it, and then start working backwards from here. There's too many coincidences to not call this what it could be, and I think that was a big move for the FBI.
So are you suggesting, and we're running out of time here, that this was political correctness or political pressure, that they didn't want to call it terrorism because that has implications and also talks to the success or failure of the Obama administration?
Absolutely. I think political correctness is the major security layer that does not exist right now in this country. In Israel, we don't have that luxury. For every minute we waste, another innocent person is going to get killed. And I think that the political correctness is crushing our ability, Chris, to be able to realistically insulate this population the way it needs to be so that these type of dormant attackers who can become radicalized will strike again. They realized it, and they got on camera, and they decided that they had to make a move and get on record with this, so that because they knew that this was a much larger macro problem here. And again, the political correctness is definitely the problem.
Let me just bring in Jim Hansen for a final question. What do you make of the fact that Farouk and his wife apparently smashed their cell phones, destroyed some of their digital equipment, appeared to be trying to cover their tracks? That isn't always the way terrorists act.
Yeah, it's interesting what they might have tried to cover up. Potentially the fact that the FBI mentioned they were in contact with other folks. So there may be an active conspiracy, and there may be other folks still involved, whether they were set to do attacks as well. I think they found out, as Hillary Clinton may, that you can't destroy all your digital records. So I hope the FBI is doing an amazing forensic sweep.
Jim, Aaron, thank you both.